At the beginning of the drama series, we see the man Terenzio. At that time, Terenzio goes to the airport. When Terenzio arrives at the airport, we notice him quite worried. He seemed to have missed his flight. But he didn't actually miss his flight. The truth was completely different. Later, he goes to the reception desk to ask about the departure time of the Western flight. He is informed that he is leaving in 2 hours. He buys a ticket later to go through the terminal. In a later scene, the woman had a video chat with a friend who lived in New York. Meanwhile, her best friend passes out and the woman at the airport starts to worry because he can't help her right now. Some people were watching TV and witnessed the reporter later fainting. In addition, they noticed that several people had passed out and were lying on the ground, and no one is aware of the cause. People who watch the news believe it is a joke, because how can people pass out like that? However, Terenzio knows that this is not a joke, but a serious situation. Terenzio says this is the time he should act. He rushes to the terminal and grabs the guard's gun when he is interrupted. He asks everyone not to get in his way. He immediately goes to the plane that was headed for Moscow. After some time, the flight was set to take off. He takes the passenger to arms and demands that he fly the jet. The real pilot hasn't arrived yet and the co-pilot doesn't want to help this terrorist. As a result, they fought each other. As a result, the bullet hit the pilot and the pilot was injured. This bullet hit his hand. All the passengers were very worried about this situation. The flight attendant encouraged them not to worry. Later, Terenzio leaves the cockpit and asks if another pilot is present. When the woman who was a former pilot hears this, she stands up. At Terenzio's command, he takes off from the plane. Because of the bullet, the plane's avionics were broken, so no one could leave the plane. This forces them to continue traveling. Later, they ask Sylvie why she violently takes off from the plane. He reveals that he has been appointed as a NATO officer, and I am aware of many things that others are not. When pilots insist on explaining the real cause, he claims that the sun's rays have become deadly. Every other day at the beginning of the day he perishes by the rays of the sun. Even the people who will be in their homes. He claims that Japan and Korea are already experiencing it, and this plane will be the next target of the sun. If the rays fall on it, the pilots don't believe it and say you're probably crazy. Terenzio comments that I might go crazy with you when I hear that. I'm not really angry though. Later, pilot Matthew's bullet-wounded hand was bleeding. A female passenger who was a doctor. He accepts this duty and declares that he will assist the pilot. She takes the bullet out of his hand with a hot knife. This made the pilot feel uncomfortable, and the other passengers also began to fear. That's why he knows he has to endure, because the passengers' lives depend on Matthew. Later, Matthew informs everyone that we will be landing at the place Terenzio is asking about. Despite our intended landing spot, Matthew believed that fighters would undoubtedly come to rescue them. They took off from the plane because Terenzio took them at gunpoint. However, Sylvie, the co-pilot, does not believe that help will arrive for them. In contrast, when another passenger learns that sunlight kills people, he doesn't believe it and begins to doubt the pilots and that all the pilots are lying to him. Ayaz was the name of this passenger. Later another passenger appears who was Arab and coughed and later passed out after a while. Ayaz pretends to help him, but steals Terenzio's gun. Terenzio was then trapped in the bathroom, and other pilots were asked to share the truth. They inform us that we are about to land in the West. He informs them that he will be landing in Iceland, because Terenzio wants our plane to land in the West. When the police arrive, they arrest Terenzio and release the others. They talk about the sun's rays and Terenzio believes that the sun's rays kill people. Meanwhile, the other passenger remembers seeing strange things, and each of them starts to worry about their families. Later, pilot Matthew informs the passenger, "Don't worry, I will take over your responsibility as captain. You will all be saved by me." Later this plane extends to the west. They were about to land in Iceland when the pilot noticed that there were already plenty of other planes. As a result of the excessive number of aircraft, many aircraft have crashed. Plus, there's nowhere to land and people are moving. And the pilot begins to believe that Terenzio was right. With nowhere to land, they decide to fly to Scotland. Terenzio was later brought in from the bathroom. He was called upon to tell everyone the causes of sun-related deaths. Terenzio claims I learned about it from my superior, and that I have no idea why it's happening anyway. When will this all end? I know to land far from the sun only when we need to escape, an area where the sun's rays cannot reach. Later, when an Arab individual who had previously fainted, he was still alive and barely breathing. He was going to die, but not before telling everyone that I swallowed the diamonds. The attendant makes many attempts to get the diamonds out of his body, but her attempts remain unsuccessful. They later make an emergency landing in Scotland. It was a difficult landing and the plane was on the verge of crashing into a wall. but with great difficulty he stops the plane in a moment. As their plane lands, they begin to receive many messages and notifications from their family members. There was a report on the internet that half the population had died because of the sun's rays, and half of them live. This airport was abandoned because people fled from there. They were looking for a dark area where they could hide. The news reported that if the sun came out and a person hid in a bunker, he would die. All these passengers must fly westbound. For this reason, they were preparing their supplies in important bags. One of the men wants to return to his wife. He argued with them all that I didn't want to go west. He was also allowed TP return. Canada was their next stop to refuel. The radio will be fixed, and after a while internet signals have been fixed. In addition, they receive numerous notes that were the last messages of their loved ones, because their loved one later died. The man later informs them that the planet is responsible for why people are dying from the sun's rays. One of them was a man who was an expert on climate. He knows about the brightness of the sun. He claims that the sun's magnetic field reverses once every 11 years, but this time, the sun's reversed intensity was observed to be weaker. They claim that the gamma ray burst hit every area that the sun's rays can reach. These gamma rays are responsible for the death of people. They have no way to prove this theory. Later, Ayaz learns through a message that all the RAF personnel on board the plane are terrorists. They came from Afghanistan and were arrested. They were returning to their native region. We observe a terrorist and an old man fighting outside, and he pulls the old man to the ground, killing him in the process. When the pilot finds out, the chief pilot decides, sending terrorists to Canada, and they will take a new flight from there. They finally land. Only 2 hours until sunrise. The terrorists were instructed to find a local radio repair shop nearby. They asked to take 2 passengers with them. They agreed to bring Jacob and Gabriel with them. Jacob was aware of this plane while Gabriel was not. While Jacob and Gabriel went with the terrorists, Jacob locked them in a room. He also wishes to take Gabriel with him. Gabriel, unaware of the plot, does not want to go after leaving them. Jacob rushes to the plane because he doesn't have enough time, standing there and convincing Gabriel to accompany him. He quickly moves to the plane for this. The terrorists chased him while Gabriel left in this city. The plane takes off without her and the terrorists while chasing Jacob. Then open fire on the plane's windows. This window will not break if the aircraft is maintaining altitude. There was a boy on the plane who was quite sick. Ayaz tries to communicate with him so he could help him, but the mother warns him not to approach the child, not to talk to him. They then receive radio signals from somewhere in Hawaii. They learn about some travelers in Hawaii who are hidden under a water bunker. They are still alive and pilot Matthew wants to save them. The co-pilot suggests that we're not even sure if this is correct information or not, so it's not right. It would be crazy to go there to save them. Terenzio comes there and says that all the decisions are made by the captain and why not us. Meanwhile, he calls each passenger. There it was also stipulated that every passenger would vote, and together they decide. In the meantime, the alarm clocks start ringing. This means that the aircraft is not working properly. As a result, they investigate the plane. Matthew learns that they were being chased by the terrorists they left there, and one of them had a landing zone attached to it. If it stays there, they won't land safely. Matthew decides to fly the plane quickly, and this will lead to a decrease in oxygen, and thanks to the high speed, it will fall. But in this case, he forgot that the glass of their plane was also broken. As the plane flies fast, the window breaks. Air was entering the plane quickly. Things were flying, making it challenging for passengers to stay there. Matthew slows the plane down and takes it to a lower altitude. Jacob is later shown holding a wooden board near the window. As a result, air cannot enter the aircraft. The sick child had difficulty breathing, since he has a respiratory disease. Here Ayaz got an idea and decided to use an oxygen tube for the baby. The child's mother is embarrassed as she observes this, because she already asked Ayaz to keep her baby away. Ayaz also assisted him today. The captain warns everyone that if we continue at this rate, we won't be able to land in Hawaii. They moved their landing because of it. In addition, they had to deal with the difficulties of hanging terrorists. But in the meantime, we watch as Terenzio, Jacob and Ayaz get under the carriage. They cut a hole in the floor of the plane to see the terrorist. Terenzio pulls out his gun, but the criminal grabs it instead. Terenzio was ready to be killed when Ayaz intervened to save him. Ayaz shot the terrorists and became a hero for a while. It was later revealed that the Arab passenger who swallowed the diamonds, he actually perished as a result of Ayaz, because his body was buried in Canada by these passengers. The boy notices them in the process. He was a passenger on this plane. He saw that after cutting his body, Ayaz brought out something. Here Ayaz claims that I am a diamond smuggler. The body of the Arab passenger contained the gems that I hid there. Since the Arab passenger did not follow the instructions properly, he died because of it and made me remove the diamonds from his body. Hearing this, everyone becomes furious with Ayaz, and few of them suggested that they should be kicked out as terrorists. However, most of the passengers supported Ayaz, so, unlike many of them who preferred to stay, he was handcuffed. Later they will land and refuel. Here, a climatologist informs them of a strange fact. Because the Canadian fruit they took is tasteless, he argued that because gamma rays are so powerful, that the fruits no longer have their original taste. If this is repeated, the gamma rays will destroy the structure of the food. As a result, they can pass out from lack of food within a few weeks. Matthew, who drives for a while as he asks the climatologist that we have to go to a place where the sun can't shine. Because of this, we will think about it later. The pilot is later seen telling Matthew that you need to rest now because you are exhausted. He had been flying the jet for so long and was lethargic due to fatigue. It was obvious that the lives of the other passengers were at risk. Every passenger comes to him and convinces him to fall asleep. He promises I'll sleep, but not right away. Now I have to carry the plane. Meanwhile, they receive another radio signal. He can't hear the conversation well, but only one was heard, and it was around 5 p.m. They quickly realize that the man speaking to them is an astronaut, preset in space. They were quite amazed to find that he was still alive, and it appears to be communicating with the control room on Earth. They decide to travel to NATO HQ, the starting point of it all. Matthew, who had gone to the bathroom, was found to have passed out. In fact, the bullet wound in his hand had gotten worse. The poison is now spreading throughout his body as a result. A nurse among these passengers says if we can somehow get to the hospital, I operate him and the co-pilot named Sylvie. Thinking about how I was going to manage the plane without Matthew, she was quite scared. All the passengers insist on her flying even if you have no experience. You have yet to take off from that plane, because you're our last hope. Sylvie is seen watching a YouTube video to learn how to land the plane. Watching the video was pretty easy, but when it comes to takeoff and landing the plane was quite difficult. Sylvie was getting nervous, and when they landed it was kind of a wobbly landing. Fortunately, all passengers were safe, and Sylvie gets praise from everyone. Without wasting time, he divides them into 3 groups. They have to perform various tasks. While some have to refuel the plane, others have to transport Matthew to the hospital. Terenzio and Ayaz must also visit NATO HQ. There are a lot of patients in the hospital who are curled up on the ground, dead. After seeing them, the nurse noted that she advises them not to panic after seeing them, and instead focus on saving Matthew's life. Later we observe the child's sick mother. She collected various items for her child, as with medicine and its necessities. On the other side we see the NATO headquarters. Everything brings Terenzio to the control room. They don't have enough time to thoroughly examine each file. For this reason, they decided to watch the surveillance video. They will most likely learn something from this video. Later, when the member takes sides, Terenzio and Ayaz engage in a fight. Terenzio accidentally hits Ayaz. Ayaz collapses as a result, his body bleeding profusely. On the other hand, one of their members managed to find the recording. On this recording, the conversation between several officers could be heard. These concern the underground bunker in the dam. This is Sitara number 17. The same place they heard on the radio. Rick is the name of the boy who made this recording. Now they have to inform their other members about it. As we watch, Terenzio approaches Rick and informs him, "So I murdered Ayaz." When Rick arrives, he notices that his body is covered in blood. On the other hand, Matthew's situation is currently stable. Matthew was later transported by plane. The other participants board the plane to return. Matthew is feeling much better after the operation. Terenzio advises everyone that we shouldn't wait for Ayaz, because they won't come back. Everyone was worried why Ayaz won't come back. As Matthew starts the engine, they notice Ayaz in front of them. Ayaz was transferred to the plane while Terenzio's hands were tied. Everyone is informed by Sylvia that if the Bulgarian jet does not take off to enter the bunker located in the dam, we won't have enough gas to go anywhere else. They will only have 20 minutes after landing to go to the bunker. Ayaz's condition was deteriorating due to heavy bleeding. Everyone later asks what Terenzio did to you. What punishment do you want to give him later? Ayaz says after hearing this, I don't want him to die. He should accompany us to the bunker because the bunker was far away. When the jet lands, everyone gets into their cars and heads towards the bunker. 2 groups were formed consisting of all these passengers. They were traveling in 2 vehicles. Sylvie drove the first car while Ayaz drove the second. The bleeding made Ayaz's condition somewhat fragile. As a result, Ayaz and his friend's car crashes. The first car Sylvie drove left at a distant location. Sylvie immediately turns and walks through the gate, which is now ajar. A passenger touches this gate and falls to the ground. Because current flows through the gate, he learns that he must keep pressing the button until every passenger has entered. It is important to press the button because the gate will remain open until you press it. Terenzio says, "I'll keep pushing that button until every passenger enters." Sylvie bound Terenzio's hands because he is afraid that he might trick them like he did with Ayaz. He will tell him that you will be freed when all the passengers are inside. The group members who were in Ayaz's car with him, Sylvie and the rest of the team enter after tying Terenzio's hands. On the other hand, Ayaz turns around after dropping off all his passengers, then spin again. He enters the damn bunker through another gate. Because they left by another gate, Terenzio went there alone, while all the other team members entered the bunker. In the end, they were all welcomed by the army. They inform them that everyone is now safe. Terenzio remains outside alone and asks God to forgive him for his misdeeds. He was ready to face the sun. All the other passengers survived, but Terenzio was killed by the sun's rays. This is how the movie ends. Thanks for watching.